Regarding the ongoing situation in Iran, I know there has been a lot of speculation amongst all of you in the media regarding the president's decision-making and whether or not the United States will be directly involved. In light of that news, I have a message directly from the president, and I quote, "Based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks." That's a quote directly from the president for all of you today.
What's your message to everyday Trump supporters, not the Tucker Carlsons or other big names, but everyday Trump supporters, grassroots who voted for President Trump to stop the wars, rejected this in the primary, going into another war with voting against Nikki Haley, and they want to see non-U.S. involvement in this war? What's your message?
Trust in President Trump. President Trump has incredible instincts, and President Trump kept America and the world safe in his first term as president in implementing a peace through strength foreign policy agenda. And with respect to Iran, nobody should be surprised by the president's position that Iran absolutely cannot obtain a nuclear weapon. He's been unequivocally clear about this for decades, not just as president, not just as a presidential candidate, but also as a private citizen. In fact, I have some quotes for you. In 2011, President Trump said America's primary goal with Iran must be to destroy its nuclear ambitions. We cannot allow this radical regime to acquire a nuclear weapon that they will either use or hand off to terrorists. In 2015, the president said the problem is that Iran poses an existential threat to Israel, our Middle Eastern allies, and the United States. And of course, the president has repeated that in his first term as president and his second term as president as well. That's why he was adamantly opposed to the disastrous Iranian nuclear agreement that was implemented by President Obama. And it's why he has given great latitude and given a lot of effort to achieving a diplomatic solution. But he's been very clear. Iran went for 60 days when he gave them that 60-day warning without coming to the table. On day 61, Israel took action against Iran. And as I just told you from the president directly, he will make a decision within 2 weeks.
A follow-up?
Sure. Go ahead, Natalie.
Thanks, Caroline. Can you confirm whether Steve Witkoff has been in touch with the Iranian foreign minister? And does Witkoff plan to go to Geneva tomorrow for talks?
I am not tracking that on Mr. Witkoff's travel schedule, but I can certainly check in with him to be sure. As for correspondence between the United States and the Iranians, I can confirm that correspondence has continued. As you know, we were engaged with 6 rounds of negotiations with them in both indirect and direct ways.
Thanks, Kelly. Just to clarify the president's statement just now, when he says that he'll make a decision in the next 2 weeks, is he saying that if Iran does not come back to the negotiating table within the next 2 weeks, that the president will strike?
The president is saying that he will make a decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks. It's very clear and direct.
And is he seeing any signs of progress? He obviously is holding out hope for negotiations, but is he seeing any inklings of progress that give him that hope that talks are still possible?
Well, that's why he said in the statement that I just read for all of you, based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, he will make that decision within the next 2 weeks.
What makes him think there's still a substantial chance, is my question.
I'm not going to get into the reasoning and the rationale the president believes that, but that's his position, and he will make a decision within the next 2 weeks.
Caroline.
Sure.
Thanks, Caroline. President Trump has said previously in regard to Russia, he's used this phrase about 2 weeks several times in terms of like, we expect like a 2-week deadline and then you give another 2-week deadline. How can we be sure that he's going to stick to this one on making a decision on Iran?
Well, in those deadlines, as you've seen in respect to Russia, Ukraine, might I add, these are 2 very different, complicated global conflicts, as you know, that the president inherited from our previous incompetent president in the weakness of the previous administration. And the president has spent a tremendous amount of time and effort cleaning up these crises that were caused by the last administration's just complete dereliction of duty on the world stage and American weakness. Now we have American strength again. With respect to Russia and Ukraine, because of that American strength and the president's leadership, we have seen these 2 sides engage in direct negotiations. And the last time the president said 2 weeks, you saw Russia and Ukraine have direct negotiations for the first time in years. And so the president is always interested in a diplomatic solution to the problems and the global conflicts in this world. Again, he is a peacemaker in chief. He is the peace through strength president. And so if there's a chance for diplomacy, the president's always going to grab it. But he's not afraid to use strength as well, I will add. Francesca.
Thanks, Caroline. What exactly would a deal with Iran need to entail?
no enrichment of uranium, and it would absolutely not. Iran is not absolutely not able to achieve a nuclear weapon. The president has been very clear about that. And by the way, the deal that Special Envoy Witkoff proposed to the Iranians was both realistic and acceptable within its terms, and that's why the president is sent that deal to them.
To follow up on what you told Natalie, are the talks that the United States is currently having with Iran direct, or are those through intermediaries? And if so, which countries are acting as the intermediary right now?
Out of respect for the ongoing discussions and negotiations, I am not going to get into the details of them. We've provided you confirmation for now. Go ahead. Sure, and then behind you too.
Sorry, thanks. Sorry. On the topic of negotiations and talks, does the president have any hopes or specific expectations for the talks tomorrow between European foreign secretaries and their Iranian counterpart?
Well, certainly the entire world is on the president's side when it comes to the fact that Iran cannot obtain a nuclear weapon. This is something that pretty much all of humanity, except for the Iranian terrorist regime themselves, agree upon. And so the president expects that Europe will deliver that message directly to the Iranians.
Is the possibility of the U.S. getting involved in regime change in Iran at all on the table at this point? And then I have one on Nike as well.
Sure. The president's top priority right now is ensuring that Iran cannot obtain a nuclear weapon and providing peace and stability in the Middle East.
The Iranians are getting to Geneva. Does that mean they found a way to get to the White House?
I am not going to get into hypotheticals, but as you heard from the president yesterday, they have expressed interest in doing so.
There's a lot of pressure on the president to come to the aid of Israel. There's a lot of pressure on him to finish the job with force. How is he balancing the concern that if he doesn't choose to do that, that it would send a message to Xi Jinping about the U.S. commitment to Taiwan?
Well, the president enjoys a very respectful and cordial relationship with China's president. He has long maintained that, even in his first term. And China and the United States share many strategic interests, both in terms of economics and also, of course, global affairs and foreign policy as well. However, when it comes to balancing these different viewpoints, the president is balancing a lot of viewpoints, and he is listening not just to other world leaders, but to his advisors and to people here in the country and the American people too. And I think that's what makes this president such a great leader, is his ability to listen and make a good decision on behalf of the American public based on his instincts and his experience. Don't forget, this is a president who was here before, and the world was a much more peaceful and stable place when he left office than when he came back in after the past 4 years of complete incompetence by the previous president. Philip, go ahead.
Thank you, Caroline. Two quick questions. When the president says Iran is very close to a nuclear weapon, is he relying on U.S. intelligence or intelligence sharing from an ally to make that assessment?
It is a fact, and the United States government maintains this fact, that Iran has never been closer to obtaining a nuclear weapon.
And then if the U.S. were to take some type of military action, would the president go to Congress to seek war authority?
I'm not going to engage in hypotheticals. I gave you the statement from the president. He'll make a decision within 2 weeks.
Thank you, Caroline.
Sure. Go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline.
Mary and then Elizabeth.
Two questions, one on Iran and then the second on something Jasmine Crockett said this morning. So given that we know the Iranian government did order an operative to assassinate the president, is there concern that Iran might respond with non-traditional military ways to some kind of strike on Iran, such as another assassination attempt? And has the Department of Justice looked into this last attempt on the president's life?
I believe Secret Service and the FBI have looked into the 2 assassination attempts that took place against the president, both of which were sad days in our nation's history. So I would defer you to the Department of Justice on where those investigations stand. But as for your question regarding Iranian retaliation, I'm not going to engage in hypotheticals again, but I can assure the American public and the world that this administration is prepared and ready to defend American interests and assets, not just in the region, but here on our homeland as well.
There was an apparent skirmish between the Chinese and the Philippines in the South China Sea. Just curious if you had any reaction to that, and if the steps you're taking towards the Middle East right now are reducing your capacity to deal with that situation.
I believe that happened as I was preparing and coming out here, so we'll get you a response that certainly we have one, and our teams are always monitoring situations all around the globe.
Okay, and then one more just on Iran. Just over the past 24 hours, we've seen some Israeli strikes on Natanz, Isfahan, and Kondab nuclear facilities. Is there any assessment just of how effective or what the result of those strikes will be?
What I can share is that the IDF and Israel, I think, have exceeded a lot of people's expectations in their ability to really hinder Iran's nuclear facilities, but also they've taken out key people in the Iranian regime's leadership as well. So this is something, of course, we are monitoring and watching every day, and the president was just in an intelligence briefing. He continues to be briefed by his National Security Council, and he will throughout the duration of this war and conflict. And he also remains in constant communication with our Israeli counterparts, most notably Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Kristen.
Thank you, Caroline. We have heard from a number of U.S. officials who say that Iran doesn't want to make a deal, that they are just stringing the United States along. What is to say that they are not going to continue to do so if we continue to give them extensions, now 2 weeks before 60 days?
Look, Iran is in a very weak and vulnerable position because of the strikes and the attacks from Israel. And with respect to the president's statement, I shared that with all of you. And he has been very direct and clear. Iran can and should make a deal. We sent a deal to them that was practical, that was realistic, or they will face grave consequences.
Why is Steve Witkoff not participating in the talks this week?
I can ask Mr. Witkoff why he is not.
Thanks, Caroline. Does the president object if Israel attempts its own operation against Fordo in the next 2 weeks?
I won't decide that for the president, nor will I share that here. I'll let him speak to that.
And then just another one. Iran is apparently warning Europeans that if struck by the U.S., it may withdraw from the nuclear proliferation treaty. That would result in throwing out inspectors and taking the program dark. What does the president think of the value of having Iran as a full signatory of that treaty?
Well, that's reckless rhetoric, but I understand the Europeans are meeting with the Iranians tomorrow, so we'll see how that meeting goes.
Just one more on Juneteenth. Does the president plan to commemorate the holiday today or make any comment on it?
I'm not tracking his signature on a proclamation today. I know this is a federal holiday. I want to thank all of you for showing up to work. We are certainly here. We're working 24/7 right now. Nikki, go ahead.
Actually, that was my question. Will he plan to mark Juneteenth in any way, either today or with an event later on, maybe next week?
Sure. I just answered that question for you. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Caroline. The fact that this president is giving some time and space for diplomacy, another 2 weeks, does it mean that the president is trying his best to avoid a direct conflict with Iran?
I think the president has made it clear he always wants to pursue diplomacy, but believe me, the president is unafraid to use strength if necessary. And Iran and the entire world should know that the United States military is the strongest and most lethal fighting force in the world, and we have capabilities that no other country on this planet possesses.